Carl Sharperson Jr. is a speaker, a businessman, and coach with a remarkable story that we wanted to share with our listeners and our viewers. He has worked for companies such as Harley-Davidson, Chick-Fil-A, and Lockheed Marin.
All right, well, we are back this week. Last week, obviously, we had to postpone our regular podcast because of the weather down here in Texas, but we are back. For everyone that's watching and hearing us, it is Thursday, but for us recording, it is Monday. The sun is shining, the snow is gone. It's a great day. So this morning, we have a guest, as you can see, and today we're going to be talking about leadership with him. So his name is Carl Sharperson Jr., and we are glad to have him today. And so we want to talk about leadership. We're going to talk all about it with him, and we know he has a book because it's behind him. So why don't we start there? Who are you? Where are you from? And obviously you wrote a book, so I would love to hear about what that book is about as well.
Outstanding. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be on this podcast, and I'll start with kind of talking a little bit about me. The book is basically me. It talks about me growing up from 0 to 65 and everything in the middle, with stories and examples of things that I've learned in life. The way I've always lived my life is things would happen and I'd say, okay, what did I learn from it? So that's kind of the way the book is designed. I was born in Washington, D.C., and at the age of 14, I moved to Spotsylvania, Virginia. My dad decided to move us to Spotsylvania, Virginia. I go from an environment where everybody looks like me to an environment that nobody looks like me and they don't want me there. Very similar to the movie Remember the Titans, if you're familiar with that movie. My head coach was a white guy named Hal Sparks, super guy. Assistant coach was black. So at the age of 14, I go to this new environment. I can't leave the environment because I'm 14 years old, right? So I had to figure out a way to deal with it. So I learned a lot about life during that time. There was a family that lived across the street from us, and we baled hay with them. They had a big farm. We'd sit down to the table and things like that. But when it came time to get on the bus, they didn't treat us badly, but they didn't really want everybody to know that we were good friends. So I learned at that point in time that a lot of people, and as an adult, I found out that most people are wearing a mask. They have a mask that they wear around their friends. They have a mask that they wear around their families. They have a mask that they might take to church. So very few people are consistent all the time. So that was one of the things I learned at a very young age. The other thing I learned was I saw people going from calling me names to being my friend because we got to know each other, right? So that taught me something about life, in that I don't care what color you are or who you are or anything like that, but everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. So that was another thing that I clearly learned during that situation. Now I went out for football for the first time in the 9th grade. I never played tackle football before. And Coach Sparks gave a talk that I'll never forget. He said, you got your pass today. If you don't want to play, turn them in. But if you stay until the next day, I need you to stay until the end of the season, because quitters never win and winners never quit. He said, if you quit my football team, you might quit school. You quit school and get married, you might quit your wife. Getting married and have kids, you might quit your kids, because once you quit the first time, it's easier to quit the next time. So I developed a mindset that I would never quit. So I go through I decided to come back, which means I did not quit. And fast forward, my senior year, I'm the most valuable player of the football team. Now, if I had quit in the 9th grade, that never would have happened. So that taught me a lot about adversity and sticking with stuff and seeing things through.
Hey, Carl, what position did you play?
I played in high school. I played wide receiver and I played defensive back and also place kick.
You look like a center or anything. That's why I was curious.
No, I'm not a center. Appreciate that. So Coach Sparks gave us that talk that I'll never go through. Most valuable player of the team. My junior year, I played baseball also. My junior year, we win the baseball championship, and Coach Sparks is the head coach of that. But all of a sudden, after the season, Coach Sparks leaves. I don't know why he leaves, but I found out at my 30-year high school reunion why Coach Sparks left. He left because the assistant coach had applied for several positions. Coach Sparks stood up against the superintendent and said, that's not right. So the superintendent told Coach Sparks, you can teach, but you can't coach. So with that, Coach Sparks left and went to coach in Annapolis, Maryland. He's in the Hall of Fame in the state of Maryland now for his coaching. If he had stayed where he was, he'd have been, everybody in the world would have known him. He was just a great coach. So my senior year in high school, I wanted to go to college. Parents didn't have a whole lot of money. But Coach Sparks promised me that if I applied myself, he would get me a scholarship, an athletic scholarship. So he's gone. My senior year in high school, at the end of the football season, myself and two other guys get called into the office. We don't know why we're getting called in the office, but normally get called in the office is not a good deal.
Yeah.
So we walk in walks this guy, 6'2", blue suit, white shirt, blue tie, white cover. He says, I'm from the Naval Academy, and I want you to play football. Me and two other guys. The other two guys walked out. Now, I graduated from high school in 1971. The Vietnam War was still going on. Those guys are saying, I'm not going to Vietnam, but I listened because my dad always told me, never turn down an opportunity I haven't been offered. So I listened. Then I went home and talked it over to my dad, who was a World War II Marine. He knew a lot more about the service academies, and he told me it was a good deal, and you don't have to pay any money. What I realized later on, it's a at the time that I went, $50,000 education taken out of your behind a nickel at a time. So I applied, but I couldn't get in initially because I was not competitive. My third grade gave me a love of math, so I like math, and I was good in grammar, but my reading comprehension was not that good. So when I applied, I got rejected. But they offered to send me to a preparatory school in Harlingen, Texas, the southern tip of Texas, called Marine Military Academy. So I went to Marine Military Academy and learned to study for the first time. I didn't realize that when you study, you open a book, and if you don't understand it, you read it again. And if you don't understand it, you read it again. I used to come home, do something quick, either play games or play ball or something like that, or go work. But I never really sat down and studied. So I learned to study for the first time and applied to the academy again. So I got into the academy. I'm the only African-American in my company at the time. At the academy, one of the things that you get there with all the service academies is and congressmen, and they can have up to 5 people at one of the service academies at any one time. So with that, you get diversity from all over the country and actually all over the world. So that's a great opportunity to learn about different people. And, you're forced to take care of each other. You win as a team, you lose, you learn very quickly to take care of each other and tell the truth and things like that. So I was there, I played football, we played Notre Dame, we played Michigan, we played Air Force, Army, all those different teams. And then, so I played football and graduated in 1976, decided to go into the Marine Corps. Not only did I decide to go into the Marine Corps, I decided to become a pilot in the Marine Corps, right? Now, I'm going to go back to the Naval Academy right quickly because I forgot to say something. So I go to the Naval Academy, and again, I barely get in based on the standards of everybody else, right? So my goal, I had 2 goals. Number 1, graduate on time. And number 2, not have to go to summer school. My freshman year, I'm taking chemistry. Everybody at the academy is an engineer. I'm taking chemistry. After about 2 weeks, it's clear that the teacher's speaking French, and I only understand English. I can remember crying myself to sleep at my room, trying to say, okay, what am I going to do, Lord? What am I going to do? And I knew that one of the things I was not going to do is I was not going to quit. So I went to the instructor, told the instructor that I was struggling in the class. He spent about an hour with me going formulas and problems and stuff like that. It made a little bit more sense. But what I did was I committed to spending whatever time I needed to in chemistry. So I spent more time in chemistry than all my others put together. And I made a B in chemistry first semester and a B in chemistry second semester. So that was an example of the mindset, quitters never win and winners never quit. I decided to go to flight school in the Marine Corps, okay? In flight school, they tell you the first day, there's a 60% chance that you won't get there. 60% attrition rate. So only 1 out of 3 graduate from the time they start to the time they get their wings. I look to the left, I look to the right, says, y'all not gonna be here, but I'm gonna be here. I said, quitters never win and quitters never quit. So I matriculated through that. I spent 5.5 years in the Marine Corps, did 2 6-month Mediterranean cruises, 1 3-month Caribbean cruising, and I decided to get out of the Marine Corps, and I went to work for Procter & Gamble. Went to work for Procter & Gamble in Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia. And what was unique about that opportunity was it was a paper manufacturing plant. We made Love's diapers and Pampers and things like that. But in 1971, when the plant was founded, the leadership of Procter & Gamble said they wanted to hire the same multicultural mix as the community. So when I got there in 81, 40% of the technicians were African American, 20% of the managers were African American, 20% of the managers were women, unheard of in Southwest Georgia in 1981. So I learned a lot about diversity and how you really take people that are different, put them together, and you get a much richer outcome because you have different perspectives. That's what I kind of learned in that environment. But the other thing that I saw, which was transformation, was so in that plant and in that town, there were people that grew up on one side of the tracks, another set of people that grew up on another side of the tracks, and they both were told certain things about the people on the other side of the tracks, right? But when you spend hours and hours and hours on second shift, third shift, listening to people, working to people, getting to know people, it almost becomes closer than your real family because you spend so much time. That happened, the barriers came down and the truth came out about what was really the other people were about, which is the same thing that I found when I was growing up. Everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. So that was a very transformational opportunity for me. And we had the best results in all of the company's history in that manufacturing plant. So I did that for 5.5 years. Then I got transferred to Cincinnati, Ohio, corporate headquarters. Worked for Procter & Gamble for 7.5 years. Then I went to work for Frito-Lay in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, Procter & Gamble was what I call a paternalistic organization. In other words, people come in, they get hired, and then they get promoted from within. Frito-Lay was one of those places where they stole people from P&G and other places, and they would give them what they needed, and you kind of go make it happen. So it was a very kind of tough environment, very upper route, kind of tough environment. You know, they didn't really care whether or not you hurt people or not. So those were the 2 different cultures that I was exposed to. So after being in at Frito for a while, and it was a great place to learn about cost accounting and how to scale up things and stuff like that. But the culture was one that I didn't really prefer to want to have. So I went from a very paternalistic organization to an upper route organization. And I decided to search for something different. And I read this book by this guy named John Lutz, and he said that if you want another opportunity, then send out a resume to the person that that's going to report two levels above your boss's boss that you come into. Because if you send it to 8, it goes in the trash. You send it to the person you might be reporting to, they might be threatened. So you send it to the person 2 levels up. So I did that, and I can remember stuffing 1,000 resumes before everybody was doing everything on computers. 1,000 resumes over the Christmas holidays, my wife and I, and we sent out those 1,000 resumes to headhunters as well as companies. Got some bites and interviewed with a company called Colgate Palmolive, which was actually Hill's Pet Nutritions in Topeka, Kansas. So I go to Topeka, Kansas. First time I'd ever worked in a union facility, right? And one of the things that we found out about this manufacturing plant was a lot of the people that were in there really couldn't read. You know, they were very good technically, but they couldn't read because they just never learned how to read. But we took that facility, which was very traditional, which means everybody had a job and maintenance couldn't do operational stuff and operational people couldn't do. You had a specific job that you had to do, and that's all you could do. Whereas in a non-union facility, people can do whatever they need to do to make it better, which makes it really more efficient. So our task was to take that traditional union facility and turn it into a high-performing work system where people could do a lot of different jobs. And that's pretty much what we did. And so we had people that couldn't read. We had people from different places, farmers and stuff like that. So it was a very diverse organization also. And we were the best performing plant of the 4 plants in the system. And we were the only system that was a union facility. But again, I learned the same thing. Everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. So I did that for 3 years as a manufacturing plant manager. Then I did 3 years in sales, inside sales. I'm constantly moving west. My parents are living in Virginia. They're getting older. My wife is from Florida. I wanted to live somewhere between those 2 states. So I put on the job search. No, I went to my boss, and I kind of had a funny look on my face, I guess. And he said, Carl, let me ask you 2 questions before you say anything. Are you doing what you want to do? And are you doing it where you want to do it? I said, no and no. He says, okay, we're in the process of doing some restructuring. I'll see if I can package. So he got me a 6-month severance package and set me up with a company called Drake Bean Morin, which is a career transition company, executives to search, find jobs, do resumes and things like that. So I did that and actually commuted about 60 miles to Kansas City so that I could kind of recreate an office environment with support and things like that. So I did that. And after about 6 months, I got an opportunity as the vice president of manufacturing for Dunlap Schlesinger in South Carolina, near Clemson, South Carolina. So that's kind of where I moved to be closer to family. So I did that. My boss was very, very challenging. He wanted me to do some things, fire some people, and do some other stuff that I did not want to do and wasn't going to sign up for. So after about 6 months, it became clear that my boss and I agreed to disagree. At the 11th month mark, my administrative assistant gives me a call and says, the Eagle has landed. The Eagle was my boss in England. So Stan, my boss in England, had come to visit me at the plant, and I didn't know he was coming. Not a good sign. So I called my wife, and I said, Jackie, town, I'm not planning on him being here, so something might go down, but don't worry because God will provide. So sure enough, the HR manager and Stan came in my office and said, you know why we're here, right? I says, no, I don't. He says, well, things aren't working out. I says, I agree with that. So we agreed to disagree and decided to separate. Okay, so I'm in the right location, I have a job. So then I'm saying, okay, what can I do? What can I sell? Now, while I was at Colgate-Palmolive, I had an opportunity to get some training at the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's one of the top leadership institutes that's not academic. The program was called the Looking Glass Experience. 21 executives would go in there and run a simulation for a day and then debrief that simulation until the end of the week. So they were from sales, marketing, all over the country, all different disciplines. The one key thing that all the executives had in common was they were very good. So I got exposed to that and got really accurate, timely, and useful feedback for the first time, you know, and I realized that I didn't have the problem. The people at work had the problem. So that was reinforcing. So I go through that. At the end of the week, the lady that's the head of the program, asked some questions about taking some of the tools and utilize them. And so as I get to the end of it, I told her, I said, I would like to become a facilitator. She said, really? She says, I think you'd be good at it. If you can come back a week at a time and train with a lead facilitator 3 different times, I'll certify you. So part of my developmental plan was to get certified. So I went back and got certified. When I got certified, I had an opportunity to look at 21 people 15 different times over probably 6 or 7 year period. Gave me a lot of research, a lot of information about people, executive leaders, and kind of really the top of the top. So one of the questions that you get asked at the end of this session is, what's the #1 thing that you need to do to become a better leader? 99% of the time, they will say, I need to work on my work-life balance. They will say things like, I'm on my 3rd wife, and she just filed for divorce. Or I've got 2 kids, one doesn't know me, the other one's on drugs. Or I'm 60 pounds overweight, had my 3rd stent put in. Those were the things that high-powered executives were saying. So it became clear to me that everybody wants the same thing, as well as I don't care how much money you have, how much stuff you have, how much power you have. Everybody's got issues, just like I have issues, just like I learned when I was growing up in Spotsylvania, Virginia, right? just like I learned at the Naval Academy and other places, right? So when I was on the street trying to figure out what to do, and I said, okay, I can do executive coaching, I can do team building, I can do strategic planning, because those are the things that I learned throughout my career in those different places. And then in 06 and 07, when the economy tanked and people stopped spending money on training and development, then I started doing professional recruiting. Little did I know that during that time period, there weren't a whole lot of people doing recruiting, kind of like it is now. But I stuck with it and did a combination of all of that depending on what was going on. So that's kind of what I did, and that's what I've been doing throughout my career. 11 years ago, December the 23rd, 2010, I went in for a routine colonoscopy. Doctor says everything looks all right, everything looks good. And then I went to Florida to visit my wife's family, and my stomach started hurting. Went back to the doctor. He gave me some pills. They didn't work. Came back. He gave me some more pills. Didn't work. Finally, he says, Carl, I'm going to do an x-ray of your stomach. So he does an x-ray of my stomach, calls me at work, and he says, Carl, I see enlarged lymph nodes in your stomach. That's the first time I heard, okay, in your stomach, and I'm going to refer you to an oncologist. That was the first time I heard the C word, the cancer word. 3 things came to my mind. How long am I going to be here? How am I going to spend my time? And what am I going to do while I'm here? I didn't think about how much stuff I had. I didn't think about how much money I had in the bank, right? My priorities became faith, family, and friends. Okay, that's what I thought about during that time period. So he sends me to a specialist. They do a bunch of tests, PET scans, CAT scan, blood tests, biopsies. They diagnosed me with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. It had manifested itself in my stomach. By the time I was diagnosed, it looked like I was 6 months pregnant, face sunken in, arms sunken in, legs sunken in. I looked like one of those starving kids from Africa, right? So they give me 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 3 weeks apart, 4 different drugs. I go through that process. And then going through that process, there were certain things, certain people that poured into my life during that time period, okay? So I'll talk a little bit more about that story, but after 6 months, I was designated cancer-free, and I just had my 10-year checkup, and there's still no signs of cancer.
Awesome.
Yep. So I did that, and then I'll say another quick thing that recently happened is my wife had back surgery on the 9th of June. He had moved, and then 2 months into that recovery, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So she had her 16th chemotherapy about 2 Mondays ago. Now she's going to have surgery. But that's just an example of how life hits you, you know, where adversity hits you. You got to figure out a way to overcome it. And one of the things you learn in the military, you learn how to make order out of chaos. You know, so when stuff happens, you know, you get your mind right, put together a plan, execute the plan. So that's kind of it throughout these things. Now, I'm going to talk about 5 basic principles in my book, which are kind of universal, that work in the military, they work in entrepreneurship, they work in a nonprofit, they work in a family, they work in a church, they work everywhere. They're universal. They're multi-generational. A 10-year-old reading my book, had a 99-year-old great-great-grandmother read my book, CEO, pastors, and everything in between. So these 5 principles of this. The first one is quitters never win and winners never quit. And so the story about that, the first one was, I just gave you those things. So quitters never win, winners never quit. Coach Sparks says, this is the thing. I talked about the Naval Academy chemistry, and I talked about the Marine Corps, right? So quitters never win, never quit. The second one is always take care of your troops. Always take care of your people, right? In the Marine Corps, there's a tradition. The higher the rank, the lower the rank, the sooner you eat, okay? That is symbolic of if you go to war or if you go to the field, the higher ranking people always take care of the other people. Now, if you don't do that, and this has happened, you go to battle, you might not come back. Because if it's every person for themselves, you know, your own people might take you out, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
So Sophia's probably saying, well, how does that apply to the civilian world? I'm glad you asked. So
Thank you, Sophia.
let's assume that I'm working in a manufacturing plant making widgets, okay? And we make widgets with good quality. So First scenario, I'm a bad boss. I yell, I scream, I treat my people like dirt, right? I give a direct order to the quality person on the line, and the quality person knows that if they do what I said, that it's going to put out some bad quality product, right? They know that, but they do it anyway, right? And then when it comes back, what are they going to do? Carl told me to do it. Throw me right under the bus, right? Let's assume I take care of my people. Same scenario. I'm a loving boss. I love my people. I take care of them. I know who their family members are, right? I make the same direct order, probably a little bit nicer. And the person says one of two things. Carl, you probably don't want to do that because of X, Y, Z. Or even if it gets out and comes back, they'll say it's our problem as opposed to Carl's problem, right? So if you take care of your people will take care of you, okay? So that's the second point. The third point is always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. In the military, if I'm flying a plane and I have a mechanic or a crew chief that's checking out that plane and they pencil whip the information and tell me that the oil reservoir is full and it's not, I could crash the plane. So in the military, if you don't tell the truth, people can die, okay? Now, so you say, okay, so what's that guy? How does that apply to the civilian world? I'm glad you asked. So one of the things that I have found, I've worked in a lot of different organizations. We're talking nonprofit, talking Fortune 500 companies and others. But one of the things I found was I spend the first 6 months developing credibility with the people because my predecessors lied, cheated, stole, did all kinds of nasty stuff, right? So I come in and say that I'm gonna do something. They say, oh yeah, you just like the last person. He said something too, but it never happened. He threw me under the bus, right? So that's why it's so important to tell the truth in every arena. Your word is all you got, right? So when I took over that union facility, it's kind of the same thing, right? And you don't have to do a whole lot different. You don't have to do a whole lot different to set yourself apart. If you just tell the truth and do what you say you're going to do, I mean, you got people that will want to keep you around, right?
It's funny how when you do that, I've always been that guy, obviously being in the military too. And I was actually that guy before that. I was the guy that always say stuff that people were shocked that I said it. And I'm not talking about rude or swearing. I'm talking about, he just said that because it's a fact. I mean, I don't care. This is what's going on. And I have no problem of verbalizing what I'm seeing. And it's so funny that I have probably not as much, maybe still, I don't know, Sophia might be, I tell it like it is, always have. And so being that, it's funny how most people in leadership, what's that, Sophia?
You do. That you do.
She was agreeing with you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because if everybody's a yes man, or if everybody is whatever, there's no innovation. There's no pivot. There's no new, you already said it earlier. There is no pivot whatsoever. If everything's always good, it tanks.
Yep.
And so, I mean, so I just, I had to get in there somewhere. It was the longest I've ever stayed quiet in my life, I think, listening to you. So go ahead, go to point 4.
Point 4 is it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. Nobody gets to where they are without having good relationships. If you think about it, I guarantee you ask people that are working somewhere and you say, how did you get that job? 80% of the time, they would tell you because somebody referred me or somebody I knew. That's the way it happens. Mm-hmm. Okay? So when I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, not only was I sick, I was broke. I burned through all my long-term savings. I burned through all my short-term savings, right? So I'm at a point where I'm real humble. What am I going to do, right? So I said, what can I do? So I called a guy named Kevin. Kevin was the president of my alumni association class at the Naval Academy. Kevin contacted a guy named Keith, who was a company mate of mine at the academy. We were in the Marine Corps. Keith put together a GoFundMe program before GoFundMe was in existence. My classmates and military alumni financially supported me for an entire year because of relationships, some of which I hadn't seen in 30 or 40 years, 30, 35 years, okay? But that's the power of relationships. While I was going through my cancer journey, there was a guy named Stan. Stan was a year behind me, and we were in the Marine Corps together. Stan sent me a book called I Choose to Fight by a guy named Tommy Harper, called I Choose to Fight. Tommy was a football player. He played a year behind me from California, 6'3", 230 pounds, tight end. And this was the year that freshmen could play varsity football. He had worked himself all the way up to second string, and we were getting ready to play Michigan. And during the summer and the other places, other times during the year, he'd have some problems with throwing up and things like that. So it was a bunch of tests to try to figure out what's going on. So just before we get ready to get on the plane to go to Michigan, the doctors tell Tommy, says, now not going, we're going to have emergency surgery. So Tommy was diagnosed with testicular cancer at the age of 19. They gave Tommy a chance to live 6 months. They did not tell Tommy. They told his parents, they told the coaches, and they told everybody else. Tommy's mindset was, I'm going to beat this thing, and I'm going to get on the field. Tommy lived until he was 55 years old, and he had 2 kids. They told him, you're going to die in 6 months, and you'll never have kids, right? So I'm reading this book as I'm going through my cancer journey. So it gave me hope in what the future is. So that's one of the things that's very important. So Stan poured into my lady that lived up the road from me, up the street from me, named Diana. Diana was a breast cancer survivor. Diana called me, had my first chemo to encourage me. And she told me about what she called her chemo walk. She said while she was going through chemotherapy, she used to walk every day. And so she encouraged me to do that. So I started doing it every day. I would walk. And so what I would do is I would walk. So that would help give me exercise and clear my mind. But the other thing I did was whenever I had negative thoughts in my head, this could be while I was sleeping or while I was walking, I would say one of 3 verses. I would say the Lord's Prayer, the Prayer of Jabez, or the 23rd Psalm. And that would take the negative stuff in my head and replace it with positive things. So that's what I did. But those are 3 examples of individuals that poured into my life while I was going through my darkest journey, okay? And then the 5th one is about priorities, okay? My priorities are faith, family, and friends. And when times get tough, like this pandemic, you got to figure out what you're going to do. There's a bunch of chaos going on, okay? Get your mind right, put together a plan, work, and keep it moving. So those are the 5 points, and that's what's in the book. I really do believe it's a transformational type book. I call it a manual for overcoming adversity in any environment, in any stage of life.
Was it you in our conference that talked about EQ and IQ?
It was not.
It's just an interesting thing about leadership to me. When you think about it, the emotional EQ is the emotional side of people, kind of the street smarts, and IQ is your education stuff, right? And you see people that are so off of that. It's one of my, I thought you were part of that conversation. So, I mean, that's why I brought it up. But it is an interesting thing about leadership is to get people with their priorities correct. And with their priorities, what does come the educational, to educate yourselves and read a book, get a coach, and all that kind of stuff. So let's move forward to where you are today and in your practice. Okay. When you're dealing with leaders, I mean, whoever you're working with, I mean, so let me set the stage back up. So who's listening to this podcast is generally service-based business owners. There are some other ones, some other different things in here, but generally it's a service base. So, it's your plumbers, your HVAC companies, a lot of chimney companies on here because I'm in that industry, and things like, painters, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of them are to the next level of they're not just a solopreneur, they have employees and they're all trying to break through to, get to another level of business. What would you say to somebody as a leadership thing if someone comes to you and I'm not talking systems, I'm talking to a person, what they could do to work on, like when they first start their journey of really going into leadership. Okay. People manage their company without being a leader. They get up to $1 million, right? Because they're the technician. So they're really pumping it out. They get a couple employees, maybe 5, and they're still a technician. And then they have to blast through that I'm not a technician and now I'm an owner, and I have to take myself out of the field, and then they kind of go through another transformation of learning to manage these people. And it's the leadership, they still don't have their head wrapped around leadership quite yet. It's kind of a funny thing. The 1 million mark, you're all technician. You're a half technician, more of a manager till the 2 million. And then that 2 million is where now you probably have 10 plus employees. And now you're starting to go, okay, I have to, there's something, my culture is not where it is. How do I build my culture? And they're always stuck because they don't even, it's not even in their mind. They don't get it. It's the culture that can take a 2 million to a 4 million without any more customer acquisition. I've done it. So, and I've watched other companies I've helped do it as well. So my question is to you, if you were to take on a company, like we're at, let's just say they're at a $2 million mark, they really have finally, or they're about to pull themselves to really be a leader. What would you start with them on?
Well, this is interesting because I have a client, HVAC company, and is at the 2 million mark and wants to grow. What you just described is exactly the situation. Exact situation, right? So the first thing I would encourage anybody to do is to get my book. And I'm not saying that just because I'm promoting my book, because it tells you things like, how do you give feedback? How do you train people? How do you learn from the best of the best? How do you make sure that you're doing the right thing? So it's some basic principles that are foundational for that. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is it's a lot of it's between your ears. Like you said, the organization is only going to go as far as the leader, which means the leader, in order to grow, has to give up some stuff.
Right.
Because you can't be everywhere all the time, right? That means you have to develop, either you have to have the skill or you hire somebody that has the skill. So this company I'm talking about is hiring me to do exactly what you're talking about. What I'm doing now is I'm assessing everybody okay, finding out what their skills are, what they can do, what they want to do. And he's got 2 sons that he wants to transition the business to, and they want to do that. But it's a lot of dynamics when you start doing it, but the key thing is being able to grow and develop people. So that I use the example of, if you're familiar with the circus and you have the guy that has the top spinning, okay? So if you have an HVA company or something, like you got sales that's doing that, that's spinning, okay? They got the service people that's spinning, you got customer service, and you got a bunch of others, and I'm the manager, I'm the leader. I want to be where I don't want to be doing anything all the time. I want to go to all these different places and give them whatever focus they need, direction they need, and then I can come back and do something else and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, you need to be the tent, not the guy holding sticks, looking down at everybody.
Exactly.
You need to, it's the $30,000 or 30,000 foot view. That's what you try to get these entrepreneurs or business owners to be, is you've got to be the view down. You got to be looking from the plane down, because now you can see everything, and you have to manage systems, not people. That's just a whole nother podcast I've done and stuff. But if you need help with that guy, go ahead. That's my specialty, Carl. Give me a call. I'll help you with anything you need with that particular client. But, so as you're developing the leaders, something just kind of, it's on topic. I just had my own master's management do. I'm a huge EMyth guy. Did you have to go through training, Carl, with PBCA? Did you go through that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a hidden book. It's not really hidden. It's just a lot of people don't know about it, from Michael E. Gerber. It's the EMyth Manager Seminar. It is I just gave it to all of my managers at Masters, and I'm getting texted back from all of them. I cannot believe this book is this powerful to me. And the funny thing is, Michael E. Gerber is one of my greatest heroes, and it's what launched me into my coaching career, because I had done a lot of his stuff. But they finally, from someone else's, because we're so systematized and still growing systems, finally see where I'm coming from, and then put it in their perspective of what they should be doing. So for your client, have his sons read the EMyth Manager Seminar. You Audible it. You might be able to buy it. I don't know. I Audible everything. So But
Okay.
it is really. Have you audibled your book yet?
No.
No. I'll have to. You'll have.
No.
I guess
It's
I gotta go through your.
Kindle and
I gotta go through
it's
your
Kindle and
website.
hardcover.
Signed book, right? That's everybody.
Yeah, you can buy it that way, or you can get it on Amazon. If you get it through my website, then I'll sign it.
Got it. And so, but okay, so now that I've said, I mean, really, when you're dealing with leadership, you're in the core. You've done. I mean, you didn't even give your resume on all the companies you've actually worked for. I mean, it's pretty big, people. I mean, this guy's not your mid-level manager that's been through. He's worked at some big conglomerates. I mean, we're talking trillion, billion, and maybe $1 trillion companies. I don't know, but so back to the leadership thing is okay. So now let's take you to you're dealing with a gentleman who's got a successful business, and this is something that and comes to you and needs help, but how do you think has reached his pinnacle and work with him?
Yeah, that's a good point. Some of it goes back to what I said when I was working with these high performing people at the Center for Creative Leadership. I learned that people at the highest level have problems. They have issues too, just like everybody else. I mean, and so a lot of times what happens is when you get to the pinnacle of whatever, right? You could be a CEO, you could be the head of a startup entrepreneur, you could be a superintendent, you could be a senior pastor in a mega church, you could be a father. It doesn't make any difference. But once you get to that pinnacle part, it's very, very lonely at the top. Somebody used to tell me something all the time, says the higher you get, the more your behind is exposed. And when you get to certain levels, and I used to think about the Wiz talks about the Wicked Witch of the West, and she had this thing saying, don't bring me no bad news. Don't bring me any bad news. So when you get to that high level, it's a higher probability that people around you are going to be blowing smoke up your behind, I say, telling you, that everything's rosy, right? This is with entertainers. It doesn't make any difference. It's real tough to find people around you that really, really love you for you. They love you for your stuff and for your power.
Right. Well, it's the reason I asked you that, because it's such a good point, and it came up, and I think you were part of that conversation, was when you are at your pinnacle, or if you're a business person that is running a $5 million company, and you think you're growing and stuff, and you've done it all you by yourself. One of the questions that are asked us all the time is, well, how could you help me? And I mean, they think they know everything and everything else, and maybe they have a great system, maybe they have all this, and maybe they get stuck or they don't. But like we said it, in our conference this weekend, is and the answer was, I think it was you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So tell that story. It's a better story for you to say.
Okay. Yeah, I was. This guy reached out to me. He's a retired Marine, and he was running a manufacturing plant that was selling medical equipment. So business was booming. He wanted to grow and build a manufacturing plant, $12 million manufacturing plant. So he reached out to me because he was impressed with what he saw with me, and we had some commonalities. I give him my pitch, find out what he wants and things like that. And he says, I have one objection question. He says, don't take it the wrong way, but how can you help me? He says, I've got a very successful business, been successful in the Marine Corps. This guy was getting ready to build a $12 million facility and not borrow the money. Okay, that's the kind of cash he had, right? So he did have a lot of stuff. So when he asked me the question, one of the things that I always do is when somebody says something, even if it's negative, not negative, depending on what, sometimes say, I understand or I agree with you, So I said, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I said, so then I gave him the analogy. I said, what does a superintendent, what does the head of the CEO of an organization have in common? And what does another person that's at the pinnacle of their career as an entrepreneur, what do they all have in common? He says, I don't know. I said, they don't have anybody they can talk to. And I can talk to you and give you the truth. Everybody's got blind spots. Everybody. Example, let's say I'm artist. For whatever reason, we're in disagreement with something, okay? it's no way in the world. My blind spot is her. You just don't have. So I don't care who you are, how smart you are. If you're in a situation, you got blind spots. Okay. So if you think about it, all the greats, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, anybody you can think of that's at the top 1 percentile, right? They all have a coach. Why do they have a coach? Because they need somebody to push them. They need somebody to show them things that they can't see. So really, when you think about it, what I have found is normally the people that are on the ball, ones that say they need help. The ones that are drowning are the ones that say they don't need help.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny when we're if for anybody who's listening who's possibly thinking of hiring a coach or a consultant, to the point of what it is, it's not just our experience that will help you. I am not the smartest guy I coach. I guarantee you. I'm a luckily mid-level intelligent person, and so but I'm very street smart. But what I have is the gift of teaching and caring. So when I know, and I also know how to listen and ask the right question. A lot of times when for this an example, when COVID hit, my clients, and me included, all were freaking out. So I stopped one-on-ones and we all did mastermind together and just talked. Like the first month, like in April, we all just got together community-wise on Zoom call and we all just talked. And everybody, there was some crying, there was some yelling, we were freaking out. We got through it together, and we all took every wits and smarts and every single one of those companies gets a new PPP loan because they didn't lose money last year. They were closed down for 3 months and still made it up because we worked on their business. Once we got over the I'll just say it, oh shit of what it was, right? We then carried on and said, okay, train, let's get our mind working on us and them, which is we, and do it. Every one of my companies, here's the crazy, except for mine, and we were doing the same thing, but had a quarter down. Every one of my companies had big quarters up. They made for all that money that they did, and my company did well too. It just wasn't. We just had a bad. When we shut down a little bit, it was just slow enough to where we qualified for the PPP loan. But the point is we looked always at us and what we could do to better us. And as we kept doing that, we just kept getting better at it. When there were other chimney companies I know in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston that closed down. They did not get calls. They were not getting enough calls. And we were busy. Sophia was a COVID hire.
Yep.
I didn't ever have that position. I hired her right at the height of COVID, June. I hired it June 1st, roughly, and so, yeah. And so, I don't know, I'm kind of getting off a little bit, but
it's applicable. No, I'll tell you my COVID story. So I was in the process of transitioning from doing a lot of recruiting to going and stuff like that, right? So it happened about the same time the pandemic hit, right? So I had a pity party for about a day, maybe. And kind of like you, it's like, what are you going to do, Okay, so what do I have? At the time, I had 5,000 contacts on LinkedIn, and I had 3,000 contacts on Facebook. So I daily started contacting them, asking them, are you open to a call to see how we can help each other? Now, my pitch got different, the context got different, but I consistently did this. I put together a plan, got my mind right, put together a plan and worked the plan. During the pandemic, there are people that are making a ton of money. If you happen to have sewing skills and you could have made a mint when this thing started, right?
My neighbor did.
Yeah, exactly. So think about when the pandemic hit, restaurant business goes out, right? You guys have Chick-Fil-A's in Texas?
Oh yeah.
What do you see when you go by Chick-fil-A?
The lines wrapped around the place.
Yeah, Exactly, because they're already in a good position, but they adapted more, right? That's what it's when adversity comes and hits you. So really, all you got to do is be, if the lion is chasing the lamb, two of them, you just got to be faster than the slowest one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that you mentioned, Chad, which is so important, is having the ability as a leader to either what you're not good at or what you don't want to do, and identify somebody that can supplement your business and what you want to do, which is what you did with Sophia and other people. That's so critical.
Yeah, and then the way you do it, honestly, I mean, this is right out of the EMyth and a lot of other books too, is you to make your people successful is you get as possible for them to work. It's not a this is what people do, is they'll give them a system or a duty that they just, it's out of their level, or it doesn't make sense for them. So when you're going to give someone a different part of their job description, you don't look at it as job descriptions. You look at it as a system. And here is how I do it. Here's how it could be better. I'm going to do that. And here's how you do it. But you simplify it to the lowest common denominator possible to make it, and then they can work it. Perfect example. We have call center issues. Our new scripting done. I have 3 companies right now doing it. They're having issues. We have been doing it so hard and so not managing it right and not doing anything right. Well, you heard it in we worked my issue, Carl, and I wish the whole PBCA could hear this. So I made a video Sunday. I made about a 30-minute video of training on the why. I took all my points that I had from the Saturday thing that we did. Here's my points. I took all my points. I made a video, did some training. By 10 o'clock, everyone had in the call center and listened to it. I listened to every call we made that. They were almost perfect. They got the why. I have goosebumps. I was like, we did it. I called up the first girl who I have a bad call from her from 2 weeks ago. She doesn't sound like she's ever been on the call before. She worked with me for over a year. She did which, okay, no big deal. So here was the importance. Most of our average calls were 9 minutes to make an appointment. She did the script, and it's a long script. 4 minutes and 23 seconds, she was off. Made the appointment. I was like, I called her up. I gave her an imaginary award. I was so excited, and she's pumped up, and I gave her a couple pointers, and I got a win. I got the path to doing it, and here's the thing. Now it's time to manage it, right? Now you can't you're not done. Now you got to manage that system. So So Carl, it has been awesome. I would like to have you on in the future again. We got to talk a little bit more. I'd like a little bit more about, a little bit more specific things that you've done in your life. And so hopefully you'll become a regular, every 5-6 months we'll get it. But personally, let's keep a conversation going.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you inviting me.
Chad and I sincerely appreciate Carl joining us today. If you would like to work with Carl or just want to know more about him, he can be found at carlsharpersonjr.com. His book, Sharp Leadership, Overcome Adversity, and Lead with Authenticity is available on his website for purchase.